let's talk about this missile launch for just a little bit before I open up the telephone lines. And let me tell you, if it were just a missile launch, then it would be curious, and we would wonder, well, why are they launching missiles from the Phoenix, Arizona area? A year ago, on May the 10th, there was a missile launch from the Phoenix area, but it was from the other side of town at Luke Air Force Base. And I think it was some kind of a test. And, Luke Air Force Base, of course, there are pictures of the plume of smoke coming right up out of Luke Air Force Base. And they didn't deny it. They said, well, there was a launch. No, we can't tell you what it's all about. It was a test, and that's all you need to know. Okay, good enough. It was curious. This is beyond curious. This is mysterious. And it is mysterious for some very curious reasons. Does that make sense to you? This is not curious, it's mysterious. But it's mysterious for some very curious reasons. This launch took place last Thursday. And right off the bat, I mean, immediately, this thing is beyond doubt. There were a few debunkers that immediately tried to get out there and say, well, it was probably somebody's hobby rocket. Problem with that is the witness. There are two witnesses. They are side by side. They're riding in a car. There were actually many more witnesses, as is now evident on many of the forums out there on the internet. But these two guys got out of their car. Each of them had a high-definition camera, video camera, because they are Bigfoot researchers and had been out on a Bigfoot foray, and they had their equipment with them, including their HD cameras. So they got out of their car, and both of them filmed this missile. One of these witnesses, as you know, if you listen to the show on Monday night, one of these witnesses formerly was U.S. Space Command, NORAD, stationed under Cheyenne Mountain. And he was one of 5 people whose job it was to track everything leaving Earth and going into space, and everything coming from space into Earth's atmosphere. It was his job to track and identify. Things that they could not identify, they called uncorrelated targets, UCTs. So into this category goes what? What you and I call UFOs. Now, all the UFOs, if they're truly UFOs, would be classified as UCT. They would be categorized as UCT, uncorrelated targets. But not all UCTs are UFOs. There are other things that can be an uncorrelated target that's not a UFO. However, all UFOs would be an uncorrelated target. This guy was one of 5 people trained to, qualified for, and given the task of identifying things leaving Earth, going to space, things coming from space into Earth's atmosphere. Now, you heard all of that, and you heard these guys on the show say, and it's interesting, everybody is out there talking on all the forums about it now. And where did you hear it first? Well, you may have read about it in a forum somewhere a day or two before, because we had the weekend. However, the first radio show you heard it on was right here. And who did you hear it from? From these 2 witnesses. And that's part of what we do. That's part of what we've done for 11 years. I don't like to talk about what somebody said if I can get them to come and just say it. And they did. So they came and they talked to us, and you heard their story. And he said, no way was this a hobby rocket. He said this was a missile. However, remember, his job was to identify, not only track, but identify things leaving Earth and going into space. Things in space coming back into Earth's atmosphere. His job is to track and identify. And he said, I can't identify that. I've never seen one like that. It did not look like a cruise missile. It had wings that were swept back, and it was big, and it was really moving. And it got up into the stratosphere. He said all of this on the show. He said it was at least in the stratosphere because it stopped making a contrail. And he talked about the path it was flying. Remember that? In the course of that interview on Monday night, the other guest, the one that was from the Space Command, formerly U.S. Space Command, his name was Mitch. The other guy was Alex Hearn, and he said that he had sent this video, and the video that he shot and that Mitch shot, we showed it on the air, and for those who are watching, you're seeing it now. Okay, now you're seeing part of it. Okay, so he sent the video to all of the news desks around Phoenix with the story. He also contacted the national news media. One would presume that means CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, Fox, all of the national news media, and gave them the story and the video. Nobody picked it up. Nobody. Except for one TV station in Phoenix, KPHO. They did a report on it, and he told us on Monday night, he said that report said that they had talked with the Air National Guard, or with the National Guard, and that they had confirmed there had been a launch from their location in Florence. Okay, now I want to give you a quick update on some things because, part of why, this was curious. It was interesting, but part of why we talked about this has to do with the fact that a UFO appears next to the contrail of this missile. It just sort of fades in to the right of the contrail. It hangs around a little bit, floats over to the left, hangs around a little bit. It's pulsating, and then it sort of fades away. Now, that gets into our genre, doesn't it? And so, that was interesting as well. But there's some information I want to update that has made this downright mysterious. All right, are you ready for this? You can imagine doing a show like this for 11 years. I've heard just about every story you can, and every kind of story you can think of, having to do with the paranormal, having to do with UFOs, having to do with extraterrestrials. And so you don't get to hear. You get the tip of the iceberg, because for every show we do, there are probably 4 or 5 where I have either exchanged email or had telephone conversations, or both, with people wanting to be on the show. And so they have to tell me what their story is, what is it they want to talk about, and we discuss it via email or we discuss it on the telephone. And so there are a bunch of shows that we could have done, bunch of topics, bunch of guests we could have done that we didn't do. Some of those are really nutty. Really they are. And, to the extreme. And they don't make it to the air. So the ones that make it to the air are ones where I think there is either good credibility for the guest, or if I'm unsure about the guest's credibility, I don't know, there's good probability the story is true, and that might be based on other things I know about that they're not talking about, but which fit together in a picture. And there are all kinds of criteria that I consider before I schedule a guest. But it doesn't mean that I'm promoting a guest as, you know, this is the gospel truth. That's not what I'm doing. I think you need to hear the information and decide for yourself. That's all. All right, now, when Mitch said, you know, I'm retired, and where I used to work, I was in the U.S. Space Command, NORAD, stationed inside of Cheyenne Mountain, and I was one of 5 people who handled this kind of thing. Things going into space, things coming from space to Earth. That was my job. Well, he sounded very believable, and I had no reason not to believe him. But that was the first I had heard that. On the air is the first I had heard it. And so you heard it, I heard it. So I wanted to check. And it's a good thing I did. I talked with someone who, I can say someone sort of on the inside. And I don't mean it's a spook. It's not a spy. It's not something, deep and dark. But it's someone who could check and verify very quickly whether that story that Mitch told us about his former employment was true. And like I said, it's a good thing I checked. Because here's what I found out. It was 100% true. He is exactly who he said he was. He did exactly what he said he did. He worked for who he said he worked for, and he was stationed where he said. It was 100% true. Now, that's some severe credibility. That is heavyweight credibility for him being able to say, that was a missile, but it's not one I'm familiar with. I've never seen one like that before. That is extreme credibility. Now, because of the fact that that went public, and it went public in a big way. I mean, they had already put it on YouTube. They had already sent information out to news stations. KPHO in Phoenix, Arizona, picked it up, did a report on it, and according to these two guys on the show on Monday night, the KPHO report stated that the National Guard confirmed that there had been a launch from their location in Florence, Arizona. Florence, Arizona is southeast of Phoenix. If you go to the KPHO website now and look for that story, you can find the page, and there's a big black spot where there's supposed to be the video of their report. It's gone. It's been pulled. It's not there. Furthermore, and we'll come back to that, furthermore, there are people writing in all the forums all over the internet. There are postings where people are saying, you know what, I'm National Guard, and I'm stationed there. And there was no launch from our location last Thursday. There are people coming out and saying, it didn't happen. There was no launch from our location. Guess what? We already knew that. We'll be back.